I live in a deep world of acronyms, federal acronyms, budget.
Okay, so we're live, the Senate Appropriations Committee, February 5th. We are going through some of the FY26 budget testimony. Today we have the Vermont Arts Council. We have the Executive Director. You can introduce yourself, but then we also have somebody that's with you.
Yes, Deirdre Connolly, who's our operations specialist, is going to be running the PowerPoint from Zoom.
Okay, great. And if you could introduce yourself for the record, and then we'll introduce ourselves.
Great. I'm Susan Evans-McClure. I'm the Executive Director of the Vermont Arts Council.
I am Senator Phil Booth from Chittenden South.
I'm Pat Brennan from Grand Isle County in Colchester.
Ginny Lyons from Chittenden Southeast.
Andrew Persick from the Washington District, Washington County, and other towns.
Rich Westman from the Moyle District, and I do have a Franklin County town.
Bob Norris, Franklin County, and the town of Alberg in Grand Isle.
Ann Watson from Washington District, which is Washington County, Stowe, Orange, and Braintree.
Great. Well, nice to meet you all. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm going to talk a bit about the Vermont Arts Council and our background and our funding. I can also I've heard some questions about film tax credits, so I'm happy to answer questions about that too, although it's not on my prepared remarks. So the Vermont Arts Council is the state's arts agency. We're the state affiliate of the National Endowment for the Arts. Our mission is to participate and advance the arts and creativity throughout the state. And what we're really working to do is build a state where artists thrive, where creativity is at the heart of our communities, and where everyone has access to the arts in their lives and education. We primarily work as in a few different ways, most often as grant makers. We invest private, state, and federal funding in the arts through a transparent process that supports artists, arts organizations, education, and communities. We also do a lot of training and professional development for the arts and creative sector, really to bring people together, to learn, and to ensure that artists and organizations have the skills they need to succeed. And we're the central source for information about the arts and culture and arts policy and cultural policy across the state as well. Next slide, please, Deirdre.
Are you officially the Vermont Council on Arts or the Vermont Arts?
You're
the Vermont Arts.
Well, I believe our official title is Vermont Council on the Arts.
Okay, that's how it's in our.
Yes, and that is what all of our legals are. This is an interesting thing when you join an organization. We've always been officially the Vermont Council on the Arts. We were created in statute in 60 years ago. This is our 60th anniversary. And as the Vermont Council on the Arts, somewhere along the line, we did a DBA Vermont Arts Council.
Okay.
So we take both names.
Okay.
So Deirdre, I don't know if you can make it so that you can see just the slide. We can see the slide and the notes, but if not, that's okay.
Thank you. I'll see if I can swap that out.
Okay, thank you.
There you go.
Perfect, thank you. So in FY24, the council awarded a little over $3.2 million in funding to 131 individuals and 235 organizations and businesses in every county of the state. And I will note that over the past 5 years, while we were incredibly grateful to get that funding and be able to support as many folks as we can, we're really only able to fund on average about 45% of the applications that we do receive. And there is always greater demand than we have the resources and capacity.
Is that by number or by dollar?
That is by number of applications. It varies across grant programs depending on what it is. So our grant programs cover a lot of ground. We award grants directly to artists. Sometimes artists just need we do a small grant program where artists just need a little bit of support to maybe submit their film to a film competition, to attend a professional development training or a conference, buy some supplies. We also do grants that help artists create new works, grants that connect public art with public infrastructure and communities, arts education programs. And we also administer 2 grants on behalf of the state through the Capital Bill, the cultural facilities grants that fund facilities improvements in physical buildings that do host cultural events, and the Art and State Buildings Program, which is 35 years old this year and is a public art program where we bring in an artist to create a new work of public art as part of capital construction projects. I'll say that in FY24, we also wrapped up the Creative Futures grant program. Creative Futures was an unprecedented, I can't even say it anymore. I say unprecedented so much. I've said unprecedented so much in the past 2 weeks. An unprecedented allocation of $9 million of funds for grants to creative sector entities that had sustained harm during the pandemic. So It feels like that was 1,000 years ago, but it is still funding that is making a difference in the creative sector in Vermont, and a big thank you to the entire legislature for supporting that. These funds were really vital to businesses, creative businesses, and cultural institutions making it through the pandemic and recovering. We have expended all of those funds and are receiving final reports from our grantees on those, and we're just hearing things that make us feel like that program did exactly what it was meant to do. We're hearing from businesses that are saying, this is the thing that allowed me to stay open. This is the thing that allowed me to pay my taxes. This has allowed me to grow and serve more people during this time where there was so much more need in our communities for arts and culture programming. So we were really happy to be able to facilitate that grant program, and just wanted to mention that even though it is in the rearview mirror in many ways, it's still a vital part of the work that sustained our sector. Next slide, please, Deirdre. So supporting the arts is both good for humanity and people and our spirits, and it also has a demonstrative benefit to our economy. So when we talk about Vermont's creative sector, that's actually all of the collective organizations, enterprises, businesses that have creativity at their core. And in Vermont, that is a huge driver of our economy. So one of our main initiatives is the Vermont Creative Network, which was established by the legislature in 2016. And that brings together a broad coalition of organizations, businesses, and individuals who are really working to advance Vermont's creative economy. And according to data from the US Bureau of Economic Analysis, in 2022, the arts and culture sector was a nearly $1.2 billion industry, which was a 10% increase from the year before, and represents about 3% of Vermont's GSP, which is something that kind of, you don't always think of the arts in that way, right? You go to a performance or a program, maybe you're an artist yourself in some capacity, as I know many legislators secretly are. And it's also another side of it to think about the real strong economic impact. Can you flip to the next slide, please, Deirdre? Oh, wait, can you go back one, please? Or one more? No, one more. Back to the money slides. Oh, I skipped those slides. That's why. Can you please go to the money slides, Deirdre? Okay, can you go to the next one? Thank you. Okay, we'll go back to those in a minute because I don't want to forget those are important. Another study that we released last year, the Arts and Economic Prosperity 6 survey, also put some hard numbers to the experience that many of us have. I'll say for myself, I'm going to a play tonight at Vermont Stage in Burlington, which I'm very excited about. I'm gonna drive all the way to Burlington. I'm gonna go out to dinner. I'm gonna go to the show. I'm gonna pay for parking. And when we started to add up the numbers of those associated expenses on top of the price of my ticket, you had some real numbers there. And what this study found was that there were 1.4 million attendees to these arts and culture events in 2022. 75% of them were local attendees, which means they went to something in the county in which they live. 25% of them were non-local. And when they split up those numbers, it's around local people. So what I will be doing tonight is spending around $30. I will be spending more going out to dinner, but the data says I'll spend around $30 on top of the price of my ticket. Non-local attendees on average spend over $50 every time they buy a ticket to an event. So when you are putting these state investments here, it's a direct investment in our economy. We've also been tracking the funding that goes to the culture. This is outside of our appropriation, but I think worth noting that the cultural facilities grants, which are funded through the Capital Bill, since 2014, when we started keeping data on this, we have the projects that we funded have totaled $9 million. So we only fund a piece of that, but there's been $9 million spent on the projects that we've incentivized. 75% of that money has gone directly to Vermont businesses. So it's not money that's going out of state. It's really staying here and driving our local economy. Deirdre, can I ask you to go back to the slides with the pictures, starting at the first one? Thank you. I did want to pull out some highlights of our grantees from FY24. Just to give you a sense of the scope of the projects that are funded with this vital state and federal money. In Granville, we funded the Corner School Resource Center to install some shading, which seems kind of boring, but is really vital to their ability to do programs. We fund the Winooski Mill Museum in Winooski, the Heritage Winooski Mill Museum in Winooski. And they hosted a series of knitting groups for refugee women from East Africa. There was a really great 7 Days article about that too, about how it was really bringing communities together. And we see this again and again. And one of the things that we look to support are ways that the arts can, I'm gonna make a terrible joke and say, knit our communities together, as this knitting program did. Island Arts in North Hero is an arts operating grantee. Our arts operating program is one of the most vital in that it is unrestricted operating support to arts organizations. And what anyone who has ever worked in a nonprofit knows is that that operating support is what allows those organizations to meet the needs of their communities and really do their best work. On the next slide, please, thank you. We also want to highlight some of the programs we fund in arts education. My own background is in arts education and something I'm deeply passionate about. And we fund both early childhood programs, Head Start programs, and also creative aging programs across the state. So these are opportunities for people to learn together in and through the arts at all ages of life in Vermont. And we know that the role of arts education is not necessarily to create more professional artists. Sometimes it is, and we celebrate that. But often when we infuse education with the arts, we're teaching the skills that all students need to be successful in whatever career or life path they choose. That could be the skills of creativity, how to solve problems, the things that we see are necessary in every field of work and study. Judith, can you go to the slide with these circus performers on it? Never saw that before in a committee, but yes. So I chose these pictures because not only is this from our Vermont Creative Network convening that we held in Bellows Falls in 2024, of a Vermont nationally known circus artist who lives and works in Vermont, but also, we're all juggling, right, as artists and working artists. And one of the things that we've invested in really heartily and will continue to invest in the future are business development training for artists. Vermont artists are small businesses, and we hear the need for business development training again and again from them. And this year, with funding from the Arts Council and the USDA Rural Development, we were able to offer free access to business training through a program called Assets for Artists. And Vermonters really took advantage of this training. We had 76 artists participate. They did the math of what the total cost broke down to per hour. And it's a great deal to offer free programming like this to lots of Vermonters. We heard from artists who really, we heard from artists who really said it was great to have some guidance. They really didn't have any. They often feel out in the woods. I often talk about, the potter on a dead end road in Vermont and how they're all alone. I have to say that I was biking in the islands last summer. I was all by myself in the middle of nowhere, and I saw a little sign on a dead end road for a potter, and I stopped and I was like, that's my guy. I talk about him all the time. So they're out there, the potters. And we really know that they both need opportunities to come together and learn, but also this business training piece. So we're planning to continue, hopefully with the support of USARD, to continue to offer these opportunities for Vermonters. Next slide, please, Deirdre. Another focus for the council over the past few years has been emergency response and emergency preparedness, an issue that will only continue to be more vital to Vermont's creative sector and our future as a state. So the Vermont Arts Council are co-leads of the best network with the worst acronym, the Vermont Arts and Culture Disaster and Resilience Network, or VACDARN. So we're co-leads with that along with the Vermont State Archives and Records Administration, which is housed in the Secretary of State's office. And VACDARN is working to build the strength and resilience of Vermont's vital cultural sector. It offers training, support, and direct assistance. And through the network, artists and cultural organizations work together to really share expertise and resources, mobilize response for mutual assistance during emergencies, and engage collectively with first responders and government emergency management agencies. So after the 2023 and 2024 flooding, the VACDARN steering team deployed assistance to artists and organizations. They provided conservation assistance for impacted cultural heritage materials. And this picture here is at Vermont Studio Center in Johnson, where they had their entire print collection flooded, and we were able, through VACDARN, to provide really technical, high-level assistance in conservation efforts and to help them recover their collection. This program makes us both a trusted resource for people who need assistance, but it also allows the cultural sector to speak with one voice. And what we've heard in emergencies, right, is what you don't want is everyone going directly to Vermont Emergency Management and yelling. It allows us to kind of be a middle person, a middle organization that can collectively say, dispatch resources, identify the issues, and be a central hub for information. This summer, we were again a trusted resource and helped connect artists to support and relief. And one story I'll share is that we heard from an 82-year-old artist in St. Johnsbury whose life's work was flooded. His studio had been completely flooded. And the VACDARN steering team was able to get, I'll say we are not emergency responders, but we were able to we use the word dispatch, to dispatch a conservator to his home, visited him, helped him save some materials in his collection. And these are things we're able to do with some funding we've received from grant funding and public funding, but it's a very important piece of, it's become an increasingly important piece of our work. The council is now also encouraging climate-focused projects as part of existing grant programs, both programmatically to highlight those stories and also in some facilities work that we are able to support too. I'll mention that unfortunately our one and only home right across the street on State Street, the headquarters since our founding in 1965, was severely damaged after 2023's flood and remains unoccupiable. We are now renting temporary, long-term temporary space at College Hall, 136 State Street, which was also Patrick Blakey's childhood home. It's got a storied past. We're the only state folks who've ever been in there. We've been in there since 1965.
That's not where the visitor center is.
It's right next door, the green building next to the visitor center. Can you go to the next slide, please, Georgia? So I've taken all this time and I haven't talked about money. The Vermont Arts Council, I'll say, is the only state arts agency in the country that operates as an independent nonprofit. There's 56 state and territorial arts agencies. They receive, the National Endowment for the Arts receives funding as part of their federal appropriation. They distribute that between the 56 arts councils. We are one of the quasi-state agencies created in statute in 1965. And we receive the majority of our funding, between 80 and 90% every year, from the National Endowment for the Arts and from the state of Vermont. Our NEA agreement requires that state governments provide a dollar-for-dollar federal match, state match to these federal dollars. And our general fund allocation allows us to secure substantial federal funding that we can then distribute through grant programming all across the state. I will say, and you may have heard, that there are some things about federal funding that are up in the air. And we have been advised by our partners at the NEA that to expect that our state allotment would be around $1,071,800, which is not around, that's a very specific number. And we are moving forward anticipating that that will be the amount that we are receiving. For all the chaos that is happening, we have not heard otherwise. There's been very little, in fact, no communication from the National Endowment for the Arts. So we are moving ahead with the plan as it's been communicated to us. We are in the governor's budget at $1,003,000, and we are requesting that the legislature fully match our federal award so that we can bring all of these funds to Vermont. It's a difference of a little over $68,000.
And was that just the governor didn't have the full number when they created his budget, or did they purposely lower for 68,000?
So they took what we got last year and gave us a 3% increase. We've had the same communication with them. We knew the number then as well, and it was a flat across the board 3% for everyone.
Right. That was the direction.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll tell you the timeline. In previous years, we've received our final award amount in April. During the past couple of years, we've actually been able to get that confirmed earlier, and we're hoping that in working with them sooner, we'll know that final amount. I will say that it is, no matter what happens with our federal funding, it is vital that the state of Vermont continue to support the Arts Council at the level that the communities that rely on us really need. We know that the arts have an incredible ability to both give people a creative outlet, but also bring people together. If you think about all of the ways that you've experienced creativity lately, whether it's going to your kids' or grandkids' performance at their school, maybe making art yourself. You've probably been in a building that was designed by a Vermont architect recently. Those are all ways that the creative sector is really part of our lives here in Vermont. And I think, I know I'm biased about this, but I think that we are an incredibly creative state. The arts and culture that we rely on, both for economic, personal, professional, societal reasons, it doesn't happen by accident in our state. It takes the targeted and intentional investment from the state that you all have demonstrated for many years, for which we are very grateful. So as we move forward in FY26, our focus is really going to be on supporting individual artists to develop those skills and financial assist strategies to put their creative businesses on firmer footing. We'll be supporting cultural organizations with the resources and expertise they need to build resilience. And we'll continue to be focused on revitalizing downtowns to stimulate our economy and our community recovery through the arts. So I know that we all agree that what all of us in Vermont will need and does need always, and especially now, is more artists creating artwork that speaks to our spirits, speaks to our communities, and also drives our economy. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Senator Bruce.
Quick question, not that I am suggesting this, but if the governor's amount went forward, would the NEA grant just match that amount?
Yes,
I see.
so we would,
Just leave dollars on the table.
yes. And it ends up, as I was putting together the budget, which is in your packet, finalizing it, we've had it for a while, but as we're finalizing it to share with you, you know, it shows up pretty quickly that it's double, right? So we would be losing, you know, every dollar becomes $2. So every federal dollar becomes $2. So when we lose that federal money, it's double the impact on the state.
Yeah.
Yeah, so answer my question.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Weston?
And it has to be state match.
It does.
It can't be private donations, it can't be income for work, it has to be.
Yep, it has to be state general fund allocation, and that's it's specified by the NEA that it has to be state funding match in that way. We do, because we're a nonprofit, we do some private fundraising on the side not on the side, that also drives our programming as well, but to receive this federal funding, we need to have a state match.
You know if there's states that don't meet their full federal appropriation?
There have been, I mean, there are states that go way over, and it's not even a question of if they're gonna match it. There are some states that have, they're decided to not have arts councils over time. They've come back since. The state of Kansas got rid of it and came back.
Okay.
So, and they have said no to that, but mostly across the country, the states are matching those funds.
It's a per capita formula of some sort, I think.
Yeah, we believe it's based on,
We don't know, it's like a black box.
we've asked for a lot of, I will say, we've asked for more information about how the decision is made, and Vermont often comes out doing okay compared to similar size states.
You don't want
So I
to ask
don't
any questions. Yeah.
When you said it.
Yeah, right. Strike that for the record. Any other comments or questions or anything else that we should be asking you?
I'm happy to answer the film question, but only if you want to go down that road.
Well, I think it's a long answer, but is the film tax credit, would that be valuable to the state of Vermont from your perspective?
So we've done a lot of research on film and film incentives in Vermont, and there was a film committee that came out of legislation 2 years ago, and Vermont will never be competitive with the states that are around it, right? We're between Massachusetts, New York, and Quebec. Like, we will never be competitive. And it's been made very clear that, you know, tax incentives of that structure are just not what we're built for as the size of our state or anything in that direction. But we've also learned that what the film industry is asking for is basically a very small investment in the infrastructure to support the film industry. We're one of few states in the country that don't provide any support for film as an economic industry. And so what we're proposing this year is to focus on film as a film and workforce development. So what we're asking for is funding that would create a database of filmmakers, resources, jobs, and that would all be managed by yeah, thank you.
Sounds great.
We were proposing that like 10 years ago on economic development.
What's old is
It's
new.
amazing, this deja vu around
Yeah.
this issue.
Is the Arts Council proposing, or are we more greater group?
The Arts Council. There's been, we've had 2 film commissions in the state, and the way film commissions often work in other states is they're really positioned to bring in large productions to film here, which has a great impact. I mean, there was Beetlejuice filmed here last year, and it had an amazing economic impact. But it hasn't really stuck here for all of the reasons we've talked about. Tax incentives not working, it can be complicated to work here. So our approach instead is actually just focus on the people who are either already working here or want to work here, and just what is the little nudge we can give them. And what that is to just make it a little bit easier to work here. Have someone to call when you have questions. Know where you can rent equipment if you're trying to film here. We also hear from a lot of higher ed institutions that do have amazing film programs in Vermont that none of their students stay here because they're not seeing a path for working here. And film and digital media really is something that not only now supports our small businesses, right? Like even the local general store needs to have an Instagram account where they post videos about their experience of shopping there. But it's also something that can be done as long as you have the bandwidth to do it on your internet, it can be done remotely. And there are people who are working, nationally known filmmakers who are working remotely in Vermont. And we want to make sure that people see that as an option too.
But we have a really great film community, whether it's sound or
Yeah.
video, but really good.
Yeah, and being able to ensure that they can keep working and living here and being part of our communities.
Promoting their
Great.
children.
Of course.
Okay, wonderful. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Thank you, Deirdre, for doing magic behind the scenes. We'll see.
Thank you, Susan. And so for the committee, we set up 2 public hearings for the FY '26 budget. And one of them is gonna be February 13th at 1:45, so it's a Thursday.
So it's during our normal.
That's next week.
It's gonna be it's next week, it's next Thursday,
Okay.
a week from today's Thursday.
Yeah, it is. No,
Okay.
tomorrow.
That's an
Today,
easy one.
Wednesday or Thursday?
Today's Thursday, I think.
Is it gonna be in room 11?
No, today's Thursday.
Today's Wednesday.
Wednesday, yeah.
Yeah,
Wednesday.
So, 1:45?
Are we live?
1:45.
Is it?
Yeah, we're live,
Yes,
this is
we-
fine. So we're at two public hearings, 2/13, which is a Thursday, a week from tomorrow.
Is it
1:45,
room 11?
room 11.
Okay.
Yes, now that we have room 11 back, we don't
We're
have,
using room 11 tomorrow morning.
We used it this morning. We christened it.
As it should be.
this
okay,
morning.
and then the
Should be
next
that
one
way.
is at on the 20th of February at 5 PM, which the A team has conflict.
Oh,
Have you
with.
seen
we
those
have
to-
committee rooms?
Okay, yeah.
With the whole
Where is it?
macro.
What's that?
Where is it?
It's gonna be room 11.
The
Well,
20th?
No,
They're,
both
they're twice the
public
size of
hearings.
any Senate committee
Center
room.
Westman, both committees, both of these public hearings will be in the room 11.
That's at 5 o'clock, 20th.
Yeah, one's at 1 o'clock during the day, and then those that can meet at daytime, one is gonna be at 5 o'clock. They're gonna be an hour and a half each one. We basically sit there, there'll be people that'll come in, they give them 2 minutes each.
Yeah.
To just,
The clerk gets to
Same
do
as other
the, do the
Yeah,
clock.
you'll pick up on the pattern very
The
quickly.
clerk has
Didn't
to
you do
keep
it?
the clock.
Groups,
remotely last year.
you know,
Mobilized.
20 people.
I think we